Man, this is one of those deep water type sessions. I mean, we start talking about the beauty. We start talking about what the beauty is, what she isn't, what she is meant to be by God, and what she's not meant to be by God. And like I said, this one gets into some pretty deep waters. And so, want to start and first thing is, why do you think so many men struggle with lust and porn? And what I can tell you about that is True North. We've on a couple of different times, we've done some surveys and kind of interviewed men at the Rock in previous events. And man, it was in the area of 90% of men, and predominantly Christian men, church men, struggle with pornography. I mean, this is the epidemic. And like John said, it's not about the sex. That's not what it's about. And so, it's what is it about, and what's it about for you? So I want to open it up a little bit. And this is a tough subject. This is hard subject. But I want to open it up. And man, what's it been for you? What do you think it was? How have you gone to that, or how have you gone to Eve? Have you gone to your wife or girlfriends or whoever to find that question, that validation, and why or how have you ended up at porn? So we'll kind of open it up there. Derek, you want me to throw it to you? Do you mind? I will unmute you here and kind of let you start. Sorry, let me unmute you. There you go.
You guys, are we good?
There we go. You're good now.
Okay. Yeah, I've never looked at it, so I don't know what the problem is with all you other guys at all. I'm kidding. That's a joke. That's a joke.
I don't know what's wrong with all you losers.
I think he touched on it there, and I think it is, it's such a sensitive subject because it is so vulnerable to say, yeah, I've looked at it in the past, and yeah, it's easy, as John mentioned, to get that validation immediately without putting forth any of the work. I mean, if you think about it, a lot of us, we're hormone driven. And so at the end of the day, it is, we want to make love and have sex with our wives. And so that is an example of maybe a job well done by us. Maybe it's a sense of validation. And so, hey, that's her giving herself to us. And in the sense of pornography, there she is. She's giving herself to you, but you don't have to do any of the work. It's like shortcutting the system, and it's immediate satisfaction, I think. I think that's, I learned that from a camp probably 3 or 4, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, just recognizing, boom, this is, if you can retrain your brain to, hey, this is why I'm searching this, maybe I'm searching for something greater, and move on.
Yeah, that's really good. I like that, of wanting the validation, kind of wanting the payoff, but without having to do the work. That's a great way of
exactly right. Yeah.
That's really good. I'm going to go to Chet. You had your hand up there. So Chet, I'm going to unmute you real quick. Go ahead.
Hey, how is everybody tonight?
Doing well, man.
Well, I don't know how it is for everybody else. You remember the song Looking for Love in All the Wrong Places? You may not know it or not, but my struggle was not with porn, but it was with sex with other women. And it's a validation issue. It's a not feeling loved issue. It's a lot of things. And for me, the realization came when I finally, as a friend of mine says, laid naked on the altar and confessed my sins to God and truly took God into my heart. And somebody said, it might have been you, Trey, I don't know, but somebody told me, said, if you let him, God will fill you up with all you need.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been feeling for months now, is that I have no desires in that area. I've been really strong in that area for quite a while, and it's only because God has come in and God has filled me up, and He's given me everything that I need. And so I no longer look for this stuff. So, but mine was more of the lust area, not the porn area. I've never really had a problem with porn, but it definitely was sex. And I was never fulfilled. Once I got done with one, I was looking for another. I was looking for the perfect person, perfect love. I don't know. It's like I could never quench that thirst. And I thank God through the men that I've met, even through True North and through Base Camp and some of the other things that I do with Fight Club. And that's where I've come to that realization that the perfect love comes from God. It can only come from God.
That's good. Very good, Chet. Man, to kind of just add to that just a hair, because I think that's fantastic. Very well put. I had someone kind of share this with me one time, was we often deal with sin or darkness in the fact that we try to turn down the darkness. So let's talk about porn, lust, whatever it is. And I know I can't even begin to count how many times I've said in the past, I'm not going to look at porn again. I'm never going to do this again. And then you end up doing it again. Well, when we're saying I'm never going to do this again, what we're really saying is I'm going to turn down the darkness. I'm going to turn down or bring down the darkness in my life. Well, the reality is you can't turn down darkness. You can't even control darkness. Darkness is nothing more than the absence of light. You can only control the light. You can bring more light in, and the more light you bring in, it chases away, it overcomes the darkness. You can't control darkness. You can only control the light. And to get rid of darkness, you have to expose it to light. And so often we go into sin and we try to say, I'm going to bring down the darkness. But what we fail to do is to bring up the light. And that's the only way that we can get rid of the darkness. You just sit there and go, I'm not going to look at porn again. More than likely you're going to fail. But if you say, man, I'm going to plug into God, I'm truly going to let him be my sustainer. I'm going to be plugged into the things of God. I'm going to stay in his word. I'm going to stay in prayer. I'm going to stay with worship. I'm going to stay plugged in with my men's groups, etc. Now you're turning up the light. And guess what? That's what chases away the darkness. And so, man, you can't turn down the darkness. You can only turn up the light. So thank you for that. That was great, Chet. Appreciate it, man. David Justice, I see your hand there. So you are now unmuted and ready to speak.
Alrighty. Hey, well, I've got, I guess, two things to say on different topics of the same topic. But one was, when I think about kind of what drove me to turn to whether it was women or porn was, I was one that was never I wasn't really good at sports. I didn't fit in with your typical, the guys. I didn't have, and I'd moved so much that I didn't have a close-knit set of friends, So I didn't really have anyone that I knew for a while. So I kind of ran into it on my own, and this kind of leads into the other thing. But it was like I could get my validation through that, but I also didn't have to let anyone else know. It's something I could do and keep it in my mind. I could keep it completely separate from no one else. I didn't have to deal with the embarrassment of people knowing that I did it. I didn't, like if I was doing it alone or I didn't have, other guys that, were showing me something, I didn't have to deal with the taboo of it or anything. And then the porn just led into sex, which was just another way that I got validation because I didn't feel like I had any other way of getting validation because I wasn't good at, this or that. Or I, not that you can get validation out of that, but, it was just it's this constant hunger and this constant fight to try to figure out one thing and there is one thing, but one thing that'll fill that void. And that seems to be an easy one to go to instead of going straight to God. It was just, it's one of those things. So I guess that's really all I got.
No, that's good, man. That's very good. Anybody else? Anybody else on why you think so many men struggle with porn, kind of why or lust and why you've struggled with it? All right, if not, yeah, and Barry brings up a really good point. He says, man, really, and I mean, let's be honest, it's not about the porn, it's the masturbation that becomes a part of the porn and the lust. I mean, it's the self-gratification. It's that seeking some sort of gratification. And so, man, it's a good point, Barry. Thank you. Next question here. So John said, every woman's question is something like, will I be loved? How do you see this affect your relationships? And let me share something real quick on this, because I think most of you know, Amy and I work with a lot of couples, and God's kind of shown us some things, and understanding the heart, understanding the root of men's greatest fears and women's greatest fears. And John talked, he said it directly. Man's greatest fear for us as men is failure. We were made to be strong. We were made to be warriors. We were made to have this strength. And our greatest fear is that we're not, that we don't have what it takes, that we don't have the strength, that we were made to be strong and powerful and that we're really not. That's our fear, that fear of failure, that fear of not being enough. A woman's fear is abandonment. It's being alone, not being fought for, not being chosen. And guys, this goes all the way back to the garden. And so think back in, Genesis chapter 3, and here's Adam and Eve in the garden in this perfect place. And all of a sudden here comes Satan and he's tempting her, all this stuff that you can't trust God and you won't die and all this stuff. Eve gets a really bad rap that she committed the first sin. But I got to be honest with you. I don't know that it was Eve that committed the first sin. I truly believe it was Adam. Because while Eve is being tempted, why Satan is right there telling her, you can't trust God. He's lying to you. You're not really going to die. Adam is sitting right there next to her listening to all this. And he was created to be a warrior. He was created to fight for her. He was created to offer his masculine heart and step in between her and Satan and say, no, we're not going to do this. Satan, get behind me. But he didn't. He acquiesced. He resigned. He pulled back. And out of fear, Adam didn't do anything. He did not offer his masculine heart. He did not offer his masculine strength. And in Eve's greatest moment of need, Adam abandoned her. He didn't fight for her. He did not offer his masculine strength to her. And he let her fall. And to this day, every man, our greatest fear is failure. And Eve's greatest fear is abandonment. Not being chosen, not being fought for, not being sought after. It's abandonment. And it goes all the way back to the garden. And so, man, understanding that about your own heart, understanding that about her heart helps give so much clarity. Times when she's fearful, when she's needy. I'm not saying they're ever needy or fearful. No, never. But when they are, man, understand the root of why. Why is she feeling that way? What are her deep fears and where they come from? So I'm going to shut up now. Derek, I'm going to come to you real quick. Because, man, I know Gina, know your wife. She's never been fearful, never been needy. She is awesome.
Nope.
Yeah, exactly.
Nope,
Derek's
never. Yep.
not saying a word.
Wait, is she listening? No. Okay, we're clear. So yeah, I mean, I see it just like you're talking about, just like John talked about, and just like you've mentioned. I see it play out in her life. The desire to be chosen, the desire to be loved, the desire to be pursued. I mean, that's a conversation that we've had years and years. And it comes back to, there was a time in her life when her parents got divorced and she didn't feel chosen or pursued by her mom. And so that's a wound that she's carried with us. And so that's something that she puts on me. And so it's a question that I have to answer and I have to be conscious of. And it's a question that I have to think about. And so it's also pretty neat because I have two kids. I have a little girl and a little boy, and I see them ask questions differently. And I see them, like John said, I see them propose themselves differently. For my daughter, she wants to be noticed. She wants to know how beautiful she is. She wants to know that, yes, I love spending time with you, and I would choose to spend time with you over something else. And for my son, he wants to hear how accomplished he is, how great of a job he did, or how strong or fast, or how good he is at sports, or just accomplishing something. And so I can see it play out at such a young age. And from a father's perspective, it just being cognizant of it, it helps me to understand how to answer those questions and how to encourage them to specifically answer those questions for them. But yeah, I think for our wives, the fear of not being chosen leads to more fear. And so therefore fear can also come in there and kind of take root and grow over a period of time. It's definitely something to be aware of.
Absolutely. So let me ask you so tell me specifically, what do you do in those times to fight for her heart?
I'd fight for her heart. I say, whoa, time out. We're going to pray. I mean, so if it's a fearful time, then I fight for her heart. And I say, whoa, time out. We're going to pray, step one, and we're going to fight for your heart. And we're going to pray against fear, and we're going to rebuke fear, and we're going to call Jesus into this time and put the cross of Christ between her heart and her fear and anything else that's going on in the world. If it's a time about choosing her, so let's say John talked about early in marriage, for him it was job, and then it was mountain biking, and then it was doing something else. Well, those are all choices where he chose something else over his wife. And I am plenty guilty of that, of in the past, hey, this is my story, and so I'm going to choose something that I want to do. And my wife has very clearly brought it up in those words. She said, I feel like you're choosing other things before me. And so I just have to be very conscious of that. If it's something that I want to do, is it more important than choosing her? What I've learned is the more I choose her, the more that I submit to her by choosing her and choosing to be with her, then the more she wants me to go do the things that I want to do. And that's not like a manipulation thing. That's just a growing thing. Andy Stanley, he's a pastor from North Point Community Church. I listened to his message just last week, and it's about marriage. And essentially the bottom line is that marriage, or healthy marriages, are a race to submit to each other. A race to submit. Who can submit more and who can submit first? And that's what it is. I want to love her in the way that she needs to be loved. And in turn, she wants to love me in the way that I need to be loved. So by choosing her over personal activities, by choosing her over things that sound like fun, hey, I would rather spend time with you, babe. I'd rather hang out here with you and spend time with you. Hey, let's go on a date. I choose you over going to a game. Hey, I choose you over doing something like that. That's one thing that I've learned.
That's good. That's really good. Man, David, you just said something really, really powerful in here, and I'm going to share it since you typed it and put it on here with everyone. But here on the chat, hopefully you guys have all seen this, but he shared he struggles with the fact that he's used this understanding, basically how to speak to a woman and how to speak to her heart, to get what he wanted out of the relationship. And I think we understand what you're saying there. Knowing that women struggle with this and then capitalizing on it for your own gain. And we have to be so careful to not to use her wound to try to help medicate our wound and our selfish desires. But we should desire to help with healing, but be careful not to add more wounds. And man, that's a really, really good point. Especially for any of you guys that are single. Once you understand her needs and her desires and you know how to kind of speak to that, it's very easy to manipulate her and manipulate her heart. And you got to be real careful with that. But even us married guys, you want to speak, we need to know this for the married guys to be able to speak to our wives' heart to begin to heal them and to begin, like Derek was saying, be that woundedness and that brokenness in her. It's part of Derek's job to help heal that. That's part of to submit. And it'd be real easy to get ticked off and it'd be real easy to get frustrated. But God's called us to actually offer our masculine strength on her behalf and help heal that. So, man, that's really, really good. And David, man, praying for you on that. Don't know it, pray against it, ask for forgiveness, and move on. Don't let it hang around your neck. Don't own it. Repent and turn from it. But that's good, man. Anybody else? How's this come out in your life with your wife or women, and maybe it's daughters? It could even be with your daughter. But how's this with your wife, where you can see that need in her? Will I be loved? Will I be chosen? Are you going to fight for me? And how have you responded? How's it maybe went well, or where's a time where it didn't go well? You did not respond well. And if you will, just go on the right on your deal there and you can raise your hand and I'll unmute you. Perry, are you trying to? Can't hear it? No? Okay. Nobody? You guys have all done it right? Everybody's done it right. Oh, there's Perry. Okay. Perry, I'm gonna unmute you. There we go.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. As you know, and I don't know, and everybody knows, my wife has changed as well. And both of us going to this and learning from this and learning how, I think that my wife and I both have been on every type of counseling that is needed. And every day it's just something different. And, it's just like an education. You learn something new every day. However, we're still learning and we're still, beating ourselves up for not doing it right and everything else like that. So it's just one of those things that nobody's perfect. Nobody's going to be able to get it. And, you're going to lash out sometimes and you're going to be angry or you're going to be mad. But, then you can, go back and just like with God, you can apologize and say you're sorry, and then and ask for forgiveness. And that's one of the things that we do. And so with my wife and with the that will I be loved type of thing, and especially I've got two daughters too. And that's one of the things that I work on with my daughters or at least I try to, and I need to do more, is try to, be there and answer those questions for them.
That's good. Yeah, this is a tough subject, and frankly, so marriage, and we're talking about the beauty, and we're talking about our heart, and so we're talking about marriage. It's all kind of interwoven here, but and let me ask you this: how many of you in here, and just for those of you that are on the screen there, how many of you in here, marriage has been tougher than what you thought it was going to be before you got married? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so part of that is marriage is a picture of Christ loving us, pursuing us. Just like Derek said, who's going to submit first? Marriage is a picture of Christ coming after us, his bride, the church. Do you think it was easy for Jesus? Man, was his bride, the Pharisees and the scribes, were they real loving? Were they real accommodating? Did they just go along with him and everything he said? Absolutely not. Were all the Greeks and everyone else, there at the end, when he's carrying his cross, people are spitting at him, they're yelling at him, they're cursing him. And of course, not everyone. There was a lot of people that followed him and loved him, but it wasn't easy. But he was laying down his life. He was submitting and serving. And so, man, often in marriage, it's not easy. It's tough. And there's brokenness in Eve, just like there's brokenness in us. And learning to love, learning to submit, learning to lay ourselves down and not seek validation for ourselves, but learning to lay our lives down to love her, that's a picture of Jesus and what he did for us. And so, you know, when scripture says, love your spouse like Christ loved the church, that's how he loves us. He lays down his life. He submitted to the will of the Father to pursue us, to fight for us, to love us. It's powerful. It's not always easy. But yeah, it's something that we have to learn how to do, because the two do become one. You know, when we get married, when we become one with Eve, two become one. And so it affects us. And whether it's our lust, whether it's the porn, whether it's just knowing how to fight for her in her heart, or how not to seek validation from her. And here's the thing, you want to get validation from your wife. It's great when she says, man, I love you, and she gives herself to you. You know, it's great to get that. But we can't be searching it all the time. It can't be our purpose in life to get that validation from her. So knowing that. Derek, do you have something?
Yeah. I was just going to say, in addition to what you were saying is, you know, what I encourage you guys to do is take it to God first, obviously. You know, I mean, if there is a situation that arrives, specifically with marriage, if there's a situation that arrives at the house and it's the potential for validation or invalidation, just take a second. Hey, God, how do you want me to deal with this? And I've found he gives a variety of answers to me. Like, hey, this needs to be taken care of, or leave this one alone. You know, like, hey, just back off for a while, don't touch it, and let him deal with it. Because here's the deal. If we can point our wives to him, then they are going to get the validation from him, not from us. And we've learned how wonderfully powerful that is. And that's the goal, is to get the validation from God, not from us. But I just wanted to add that in there of, hey, throw it to God first, and then see how he wants us, or how he directs us to deal with it.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's really good. All right, guys. So next question here. What do you need to stop trying to get from women? And so when I say that, I'm going to open it up, because when we say validation, that's kind of a big, that's just kind of a big, broad, sweeping term. In what way do you specifically, like, what do you actually look for? Is it the sex? Is it the words? Is it her doing things? What does it look like for you? Because like I said, validation's kind of a big open term. And so there we go. Mike, you're unmuted.
Okay, so for me, within the validation place of it is affection, intimacy, and basically attention. So just I'm trying to stop getting attention from women, because in a lot of things, I've got a big servant's heart, and so I'm willing to do and help a lot of women with things that they can't do on their own, or if they need help. And a lot of times I do it just out of the goodness of my heart. But there's times when I know it's very clear that I'm seeking that attention from them. And sometimes I don't even realize I'm seeking that attention from a married woman. And lately too, God's been catching me right then. It's like, you need to hold off, you need to step back, you need to, that your motivation is wrong. Your heart's in the wrong place. And, you know, I do a lot better these days. I used to I would do things for women to get the attention. Even if I wasn't even seeking out sex or anything else. It's just, I wanted attention. And I think because there was a lot of wounding there from my divorce and then all of the empty relationships that I'd had, I had some brokenness and wounding from, okay, they're not giving me attention. They must not like me. And that was a whole nother sort of scrambled pot of mess. So
No, that's really good. That's really good. And because it's often not, well, and like John said, it's not about the sex. The sex kind of becomes the fruit if we allow it, but the root of it is that attention. That's what's so powerful for so many men. We want to be noticed. We want to feel powerful. We want to feel like they're looking at us, and we have that attention from them. And so that's really good. That's good to notice and be aware of, because once again, the root and the fruit, if we understand the root of it, when it starts to come up, we can catch it so much so much faster. And like Derek says, the root often begins from the wounding in ourselves. Absolutely. So knowing where that wounding comes from and asking Jesus to come in and begin to heal those places, but knowing when those things come up and catching them quick, not allowing to go down that path. How about anybody else? And so you guys can go on to the top or the bottom of your screen. There should be a spot, or you can even click on your window. You can do a deal to raise your hand, or you can even just unmute yourself. There should be some buttons where you can unmute yourself or raise your hand, and I can unmute you. But feel free to jump in. How do you seek the validation? What do you need to stop, or what? Just like that, the attention. How's that looked for you personally? Not all at once. All right.
Hey, Trey.
I'll go. Hey, go Bear.
There's Barry.
This can carry over into a confusion between submitting and praying for our wife and trying to fix our wives. And there's a huge difference between the two. And my need for wanting to hear from her that I'm doing a great job of providing from the family, or whatever it is, for that day, for that minute, for that second. I have to be very careful about that, because I can create a huge wound quickly by not taking it to God, or not asking her to take hers to God. And I think when first time I heard Salise talk about praying with his wife, and holding her hands, and all of us have talked about it now, but that was the first time I really remember it, and it was very impactful to submitting. And it was interesting when you were talking earlier about we need the light is what we need. And coming from the world that I come from, there is no air conditioning in the world. There's only removing heat. So it's the same token, we have to look for the light, and go to the light and stay in that path. And the emotions that are involved here, and as men, we have them too. Mm-hmm. Whether we want to admit that or not, we have to go through that as well. And I think learning to deal with our emotions without jumping back is the lessons I continue to try to learn.
That's good. That's really good. Barry, were you going to say something?
No, I appreciated what Barry was saying there, and very important. I'm going back to the, I guess, the initial wound, and it's something that just came across me, is that I had an older brother growing up, and my older brother and was always like, in what I considered the favorite. And I was always, the younger brother, and why can't you be more like your brother type of thing. So I was always fighting for the love and affection of my mom, if you will. And that just came across me just now. And I never really thought that was something that was an affection or something that affected me. But it did affect me. And so when I went into, growing up with women and everything, I was always, trying to be the funniest guy on the block and trying to be the funniest one in the group, and trying to attract women through that angle. And so it was always trying to be the, the funny guy. And so, when you do that, that's more of a mask and a pose, if you will, because of the fact that you're not, doing it, the right way, if you will. And you're always running from those emotions and those feelings. So one of the things with Ephesians 5:25 is that, that you, love your spouse and as God loves the church. And so that's one of the things that hit home with me. And Barry had mentioned earlier too about some of the impact that Scott Solis has had, one of our brothers has had on individuals at camps. And one of the things, and I put it into the chat room, was that one of the impactful things that hit me one time was Scott was talking to one of the guys in our group in the when we broke up into groups at the base camps. And he just looked at the one guy that kept talking about himself. And he said, he goes, "It's not about us." And the impact there was that. And it's absolutely right. And Ephesians 5:25 says right there, it's not about us. And that's what we got to, remember as men. And, because we're, if you're single or if you're married or whatever, it's not about us. It's about, our relationships and how we're going to have impact for those around us and our future. If you're not married, your future wife and family, and if you are married, your wife and family, and that's what it's about.
So Perry, that was fantastic, and so Ephesians 5, and we've paraphrased it, but Ephesians 5:25 and 26. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. We hear that a lot. But there's another part, as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. And gave himself up for her, that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word. And so, and gave himself up for her. And I think that's the part, and Perry, that's exactly what you're saying right there, is we have to give ourselves up to learn to love. Man has been asking since the dawn of time, what's the purpose of life? What is the reason of life? Why were we created? And I truly believe it's this right here, that we're created to learn to love. It's that simple. God is love. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. We're here to share the love of God through the love of Christ with a dead and dying world. But if we can't figure out how to love those closest to us, and if we can't learn how to love ourselves, how can we ever share the love of Christ with a dead and dying world? Guys, I truly believe with absolutely everything in me, the reason for life, the reason we were created, the purpose of everything that we do is to learn to love. And so often we do love, but we love ourselves. We love our own flesh. And to learn to love God's way and to learn to give up ourselves and to lay down ourselves. Because like I said, if you can't learn to do it with our spouse, if you can't learn to do it for those closest around you, how can we share the love of Christ with a dead and dying world? And so, man, that's it. That's the meaning of life. That's the purpose. That's why we were created, to learn to love. And so it's so much easier said than done. I think we all know that. But man, that's it. That's it. It's to learn to love. And so, and fellas, that's what I think we want to probably end on is go learn to love. Learn to love not yourself, but go learn to love others. To love Eve, to love your spouse, to love our kids, to love the people, our neighbors around us, to love everyone with the love of Christ. That's why we were created, and that's our purpose. So if no one has anything else, anybody else want to say anything? Derek, I'm going to let you kind of let you close there. You've got John 13, 34 through 35. You want to close with that and
bet.
kind of share your thoughts and then pray us out?
You bet. I'm following up right on your coattails. John 13:34. Jesus said, "A new command I give you: love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, and that is loving one another, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another." And so as we wrap out of here, I want to say thanks, guys, for showing up tonight. Thanks for taking time out of your busy week to sit, to watch a message that's challenging, that sometimes is hard to get out there, to explain, to talk about, but definitely is thought provoking. And I ask that, hey, as you have these questions, take them to God tonight, tomorrow, as you approach Eve in your workplace and in your life, not just the Eve in your house, but perhaps the Eve that you see on your job or on the street or in the store. Approach them as I think it's 2 Timothy says. Paul says, "Hey, approach older women like your mother and younger women like your sisters." Just understand that they are the creation of God and not something for us. And love one another. It's how you love. So, guys, thanks for coming. Thanks for listening. Let me pray us out of here. Lord, thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you for technology that allows us to reach across borders and to hear each other across the state and eventually around the world. And thank you, Lord, for speaking to us, for giving teachers that have your wisdom and your discernment and can speak to us. Help it to glean us, to grow us, and to sharpen our hearts and incline our ears to your voice, Lord. I pray that these men that are here tonight grow closer to you, that the men that wanted to be here tonight hear this message and grow closer to you. We love you, Lord. Go before us and shine your light on our paths that we may walk in them, Lord. Amen.